Well, hi everybody. In this video, we are going to take a photo and add a little bit of a holiday and winter flair to the photo. If for no other reason, then it's just fun. Everything doesn't have to have a really serious photographic purpose to it. I just think it's fun. I was playing around. I took this photo and in my backyard, and I was playing around on the computer, and somehow I ended up at what we're about to finish up in here. So I did this video in Photoshop on my same channel there if you wanted to watch that. And then I'm also translating it over to ON1 for all the ON1 users out there. All right, so first thing you start with is whatever type of photo you want. I like this one because the red cardinal, it's actually got some green in it already, so we already have the red and green Christmas vibe going, but the red cardinal spoke Christmas to me. So from there, I thought, we can add some texture to this and have a little bit of fun, and then also at the same time add some winterization to it and have a little bit of fun there as well. There's a couple of different ways we can go with this. I saw the red, and so I immediately went to what kind of a green texture can I add to this? So the first route I went was just to use layers. Come over here to the ON1 extras section, and then I went into the textures, and then I went into natural, and then from there, whatever route you want to go. All right. I thought the sandstone worked pretty good, so we can go with the sandstone texture. Gets dropped in there as a layer. We can, of course, play around. Since it is a layer, we can, of course, play around with the temperature and the tint and the saturation. You can change colors and everything. So that would be one direction that you can go with this. And then what we would do is we have that layer selected. I would simply click on that little gear icon. It's going to open up my blending options, and I would change this layer to something like screen, and maybe even bring down the opacity. And then from there, what I would do is the key to this is you've got to have the texture interact with the photo. You don't just drop a texture on top of a photo. You can, but I think it's much cooler when the texture interacts with the photo. So then I go over here to mask, click on the little mask option. We have our AI masking option, which we can give a try. But honestly, for me, what I would say is I'm going to go in here to paint out, and I'm going to go in and I'm going to paint out, and I'm going to use a higher opacity brush. I'm going to go in here and paint out the texture over the cardinal. All right. I'm not going to go on the edges though. All right. We're going to talk about this in just a second. I'm going to paint it out over the cardinal. I'm going to get most of it until I get too close to the edge. Like so. All right. Then from here, I'm going to bring that opacity down, but I'm also going to turn on that perfect brush. And now I'm going to paint out, got to be careful. Make sure I keep that little crosshair on the inside. And so this is why we got to be a little bit careful, because it's not, it's detecting some of the texture, some of the edge of the bird and everything. So we have to be a little bit careful in how we're painting that. But part of what I like about it is that it actually has the texture work with the photo. Again, we're using a bird here. You can use a dog, you can use people, you can use a landscape. It just simply doesn't matter. Anything would work. But now I could go back here to paint in and start to work back and forth between the two. So that would be one way that we could go. I could turn off perfect brush here and just use a low opacity brush. And from here, it just becomes about finessing, right? I'm going to finesse it. Let's go back here to paint out for now. I'm going to finesse this, and I'm actually going to let part of the edge of the brush go over the background. Because I'm using such a low opacity brush, we're going to get away with a lot. Part of what sells this, part of what makes this work, is that the texture looks like it's interacting with the element in your photo. Whether it's a landscape, whether it's a person, a dog, it doesn't matter. And then I'll just play with paint out and paint back in. Maybe I'll paint back in on some of the edges, because that's what really sells it too, is to get in here and have that texture, not have it, it's a crisp edge, it's a contrasty edge, but it's not super contrasty. It almost looks like the texture fades into the subject of the photo itself. And then what I would do is go back over to paint out, raise my opacity quite a bit, probably 70, 80%. And then I would just paint it away from some key elements of the photo, like some of the branches, the feet. Hit the left and right bracket keys. You can make this larger or smaller. Switch between paint out and paint in. All right? But bring back some of those elements so that the texture doesn't even interact with them at all. So the texture is only interacting with part of the photo. And that looks pretty cool as well. Okay. So that's the layered way to go with this. It's got a lot of advantages for me. What I would say is I'm going to show you the non-layered way. But what I'm going to say is I would suggest if you go and you do a search on Google for green grunge texture, you will find so many textures. There's 25 million results in this search. You will find so many textures, and a lot of them will be from free websites. Check the terms and conditions. Don't abuse it. It's usually free for personal use, meaning you can use it for you. You can make a print for a friend or a family. You can't sell it. You could even use it if you just wanted to share on your social media page. But again, you should always check the terms and conditions if you're downloading any of this stuff for free. But there's a lot of free resources out there if you wanted to play an experiment. The other thing I would say is another one of my favorite places is dailytexture.com. And that's got a lot of nice textures in it. They've got some free ones, but really some premium quality ones that you can purchase. So that's another place that I go as well. So you can experiment with that. Whereas when I added a layer here, I added one of the On1 textures. You're going to be limited there. You're not going to have as many textures in On1 as are available in the world. So you may find something out there that you want to use. So when you click on that layer, you can go into your folders after you've downloaded something, and you can add that as a layer instead of one of the ones inside of On1. Okay. So that's a route that you could go. You could also go into effects, add a filter, and you'll see a lot of those textures are available inside of the texture filter. So we could go in here and choose, we've got walls, I can go back to natural and maybe do a whole different texture and just see how it, overlays with the texture that we're using. Okay, so you've got some options in there to add even more texture to it if you wanted to. And then, so that takes care of, remember the texture had a little bit of a green tint to it. You could always add a filter here, and you could go down here to your color adjustment. Let's hide my little notification there. You could go down to your color adjustment filter, and you could go and you've got any number of different things you can do here. In fact, let's get out of there. We could go into the textures filter because the texture has this. The texture that we just added using that filter, you can shift the hue to whatever you want, right? We've apparently added one that's probably more gray, so let's add one with a little bit of color to it. And you can shift the hue of this texture to anything, right? You've got hue, you've got saturation, you've got brightness. So that could be another way to get your texture or the color to work with it. You can hit colorize down here, and then you could go in there and choose a color, and that will add even more of a green to it. So you can see you've got some different options. The other thing is don't forget, we've got our textures layer here. If that color or something about it starts interacting with the photo in a way you don't like, you can click on the mask, and then you can just go in here and you can just paint it away from parts of the photo because you have a mask on that texture filter layer. So if it's doing something to the photo you don't like, that you can always just jump in there and paint it away as well. And then finally, since we've added a holiday flair to this, which you can add any color you want, we're going to go to add filter, and we will use the new filter in On1 2020 called Weather. And from here, let's try Blizzard. So we add a little bit of Blizzard in there. You can see here we've got Alpine. That's not a bad one. Blizzard. There's a lot of different ones. You got to laugh at some of the names in there, but we'll stick with Blizzard. And you can see here we can control the amount. I actually like making it a little bit more, increasing the amount. It makes it a little bit whiter. Distance. Play around with any one of these settings, the rotation of it, and then the transition. I wish I could tell you what each one of them did. Honestly, whenever I use this filter, I just move the sliders. I wish I could add a more technical description for you, but I honestly just move the sliders just to see how each of them interacts, because it interacts different on every single texture and weather pattern that you add inside of here. So that would add the winterization onto this if you wanted to make that the little final step. So hope you guys enjoyed this. If you any finishing touches, if you wanted to, you could always jump in there and throw some text onto the photo. Happy holidays, Merry Christmas, whatever you wanted to add to it would be a nice finishing touch. Pick a nice area that's got a little bit of open space. Don't put it over the bird or whatever your subject in the photo is. But hopefully that just gives you a little fun project to think of over the holidays, and also some of the colder months that are ahead of us. If you're stuck in the house and feeling a little bit cold, maybe this will help pass some of that time. Hope you guys have a great holiday season, a very happy new year, and I'll talk to you again very soon.